just saw Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, honestly, because there were things in that movie that I liked, but because of the way the movie ended, and ended not just this movie, but the sequel trilogy and presumably the entire Skywalker saga ever since A New Hope, like in 1979 or 78, it seemed kind of emotionally hollow. Like, I definitely thought, like, I enjoyed a lot of it, but it didn't feel like a satisfying ending to the entire Skywalker saga. Like, if this had just been, like, a movie about some people in space, and it was just its own thing, it would have been more from a narrative, emotional standpoint, satisfying to me as someone who liked the older Star Wars movies and even the George Lucas prequels. Because basically, The Rise of Skywalker is supposed to be the whole Skywalker saga, and most of the most important Skywalkers and their friends are people who were in the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. And most of those characters are either not in this movie this much, or not at all. And so it doesn't seem like it's a fitting ending to their story because they're not the center of the story. It's these newer characters who are cool, but they're just one part of the equation, and a lot of the bigger parts of the equation are de-emphasized. Like, we do see a lot of the older characters in this movie, like Lando, Chewie, R2-D2, C-3PO, and others. And some others, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but since they're not the main focus of this movie, and they're the ones who are basically, like, who carried this entire franchise from the beginning, it's kind of sad that this movie didn't do more to honor them. Now, here's what I liked about the movie. I liked the action. I'm a sucker for movies like this, big blockbuster action movies, to have good fight scenes, good special effects. And this movie had it had good special effects and it had action. A lot of the lightsaber battles that were there, I didn't think were as awesomely... There were some cool lightsaber moments, but there was no really cool, awesome, I think... There were some cooler, I think, lightsaber battles in the George Lucas prequels, in my opinion, than the ones in The Rise of Skywalker. But there was definitely some cool Force stuff. And I like the camaraderie. Like, 3 movies in, and we're finally seeing a movie where Rey, Finn, and Poe are actually like a coherent team, and we get to see them as friends. We saw a little bit of that in The Force Awakens, but none of that, because The Force Awakens was basically setting them up. The Last Jedi was supposed to continue that, but because Rian Johnson, the director, didn't want to, we didn't get to see, them as a coherent team, and we didn't see, them as buddies that much. So it was nice to see it here in The Rise of Skywalker. And, there was Kylo too. I mean, we got to see a lot of them, but I felt like if we had seen more of this in previous movies, that also would have made this a more satisfying movie to me. And the movie was pretty rushed because, as I, mentioned before, in The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson didn't want to continue a lot of the stuff that JJ Abrams set up in The Force Awakens. So JJ Abrams had no choice but to, tell a lot of stuff in this movie really quickly. When, if Rian Johnson had been, I feel, less selfish when making The Last Jedi and had made a movie that was good for the franchise rather than a movie that was satisfying to him personally, JJ Abrams would have been better. I mean, a lot of this stuff would have already been done in earlier movies, and JJ Abrams wouldn't have to rush to do it all in this movie. So, as a consequence, if this movie felt rushed, Palpatine as the main villain, it's obvious they just tacked that in there for this movie, because if Palpatine was supposed to be the big bad for this entire saga, they would have set up those story elements in The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. But because, J.J. Abrams had to come up with something really quick, they just tossed Palpatine in here as the main villain. And they try their best to explain why he's here and, just now when you didn't really see any hints of him in earlier movies. But still, it kind of feels a little bit hollow. And the final ending, the final fight, that wasn't quite as jaw-droppingly awesome as it could have been, because it's within the context of a rushed, kind of deceptive narrative that didn't really feature a lot of the characters it needed to feature more, and because, it was rushed. And when you find out whom the Rise of Skywalker actually refers to, it kind of feels cheap. Because although this character is cool, this person doesn't seem like a fitting inheritor of the Skywalker name. So all in all, The Rise of Skywalker, I guess it's the best movie we could have gotten under the circumstances. And it certainly had its cool hero moments. But the whole time watching it, I felt like it could have been more. I don't blame JJ Abrams. I think JJ Abrams did the best he could, given how, Rian Johnson totally, chucked all of the, overall planning for this franchise. What little, planning there was for the sequel trilogy. He chucked it out the window. And Kathleen Kennedy didn't work harder to maintain a more coherent tone and vision throughout these 3 movies. JJ Abrams did the best job he possibly could under those circumstances. So I would say that if you're like a hardcore Star Wars fan, you should see this movie just to see how everything ends. I mean, you could boycott it if you want to try to send a message to Kathleen Kennedy, but, if you're someone who has to complete things and you're a hardcore Star Wars fan, it's worth it to you, I think, to see this movie. If you're someone who's not really a Star Wars fan, I would say you don't need to see it, but maybe you should, because if you're not much of a Star Wars fan, you probably won't care about the legacy and the history of Star Wars fans. You can just watch a movie about people in space with lightsabers and blasters. So all in all, I say The Rise of Skywalker was okay. I didn't think it was horrible, but it could have been a magnificent movie, I feel, if Disney, Lucasfilm, and Kathleen Kennedy had done a better job with having a consistent vision for where they wanted this franchise to end, this sequel trilogy to end, because when they began it, I don't think they had a roadmap, or one they didn't follow. So that's my opinion of The Rise of Skywalker. I thought it was okay, but it could have been more emotionally satisfying than it was, and it wasn't. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube and subscribe to the channel, because I appreciate your viewership, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.